empowering and made an important statement. I took it as a Black Power statement. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was projecting. But I thought, given your role on television and the need for the independence of people in the media and nonpartisanship, you were not partisan. You wrote your book very delicately. Yet I found revealing things about the way you thought and the way you analyzed. Tell us about that process and that courage it took.
Well, you know, when you grew up in my house, you had courage to talk in a way that I don't think my father completely intended for his daughters. My father was a preacher, and he was someone who said what he got to say what he thought every single Sunday from the pulpit. He also was kind of an accidental feminist. He didn't really think that his daughters were going to accomplish as much as his sons, but since he didn't bother to tell us we couldn't, we went ahead and did it. And also, what someone told me when I was thinking about writing this book is you have to have a subject that you don't mind living with inside your head for as long as it takes to do it. Because you will dream about it, and you will obsess about it, and you will tick off your friends about it because you will be so obsessed with this subject. That's all you can talk about. And it had to be something that you thought was important, and it has to be something that you think you needed to say. And for me, it had to be something I was convinced no one else was in a position to say. I knew that I was one of way too few people like myself in the mainstream media. I don't think that gives me a soapbox to climb up on, but it does give me a unique vantage point, and it gives me permission, and it gives me a story that I have to tell because there's nobody else to tell it. And so if I was in a position because of my history of having covered politics or because of being on television and people thought they knew me, to get people to talk to me, to get people to open up and tell me their stories, then it would be squandering it not to find a way to put that down. And so to me, it was personal in that sense, and that I had to use what I had been given to tell a story nobody else could tell. But it was also, it became inadvertently personal as we went along, because you may recall, some of you, that just before the vice presidential debate, this time last year, exactly a year ago, there started this hoo-ha about whether I should be moderating the vice presidential debate because I'd written a book, they said, about Obama. Never mind that I hadn't written the book yet. Never mind that it wasn't about Obama. They just decided they were going to use me as a whipping girl to make a point, to kind of discredit me. Now, fortunately, I was surrounded by a wonderful cocoon of friends and love that kept me away from the worst of this. But I also recognized and learned something from that experience, which is when they want to discredit us, they can discredit you. And the minute the debate was over, the minute the book came out, it all stopped. Because I knew that the book would tell its own story, and I didn't have to get out there and get down in the mud and fight with them. But it became a weirdly, uncomfortably personal moment for me, because I'm so used to being able to stand behind a desk and interview people without having to be in the middle of it. But they forced me in the middle of it. And it was an insight into what we were entering in the age of Obama, that it didn't matter if you'd spent your whole career doing all kinds of reporting, that as long as you were an African American, there was going to be questions raised about your essential fairness. And I just had to do what I was always taught to do growing up, which was work really hard, do the job, keep your head down, and not get into unnecessary fights. And get into the necessary ones, but be clear enough to know the difference.